The blood on his hands was still fresh when Ryder Lawson pushed through the heavy wooden doors of the small chapel on the outskirts of Salida, Colorado, seeking nothing more than a moment of peace from the chaos that had consumed his life. It was September 1878, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the stained glass windows, painting the modest interior in shades of amber and crimson. The chapel was barely more than 4 walls and a peaked roof, built by miners and their families who had settled in this rough mountain town after silver was discovered in the Arkansas River Valley. Ryder had not intended to stop here at all. He had been riding hard for 3 days, trying to put distance between himself and the gunfight that had erupted outside a saloon in Leadville. He had not started the fight, but he had finished it, and though the law would likely rule it self-defense, he knew better than to wait around for a crooked sheriff to decide otherwise. He was exhausted, hungry, and covered in trail dust. His dark hair hung past his collar, and his jaw was covered in several days' worth of stubble. At 26 years old, he had already lived more lives than most men twice his age. He had been a ranch hand, a cattle driver, a scout for the Army, and for the past 2 years, he had worked as a hired gun for a freight company that needed protection along the dangerous mountain roads. It was not the life he had imagined for himself as a boy growing up in Texas, but it was the life he had, and he had learned to accept it. The chapel was silent except for the soft sound of weeping. Ryder froze just inside the doorway, his hand instinctively moving toward the revolver at his hip. Then he saw her, kneeling at the altar rail, her head bowed and her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. She wore a simple calico dress in faded blue, and her auburn hair was pulled back in a loose braid that had come partially undone. She had not heard him enter, so lost was she in her prayers. He should have left. He knew that. A decent man would have backed out quietly and given her privacy. But something about the raw desperation in her posture held him in place. He had seen that kind of grief before, the kind that came from losing everything and having nowhere left to turn. He cleared his throat softly, not wanting to startle her. She gasped and spun around, her hand flying to her chest. Her eyes were red from crying, and tear tracks stained her cheeks. She was younger than he had first thought, probably not more than 22 or 23, with delicate features and green eyes that were wide with alarm. "I am sorry," Ryder said quickly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I did not mean to frighten you. I just needed a place to rest for a moment." She stared at him for a long moment, and he watched as fear slowly gave way to something else. Recognition, maybe, though he could not imagine they had ever met. Then she did something that surprised him. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face despite the tears still clinging to her lashes. "I asked for a miracle," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "and I found you." Ryder blinked, certain he had misheard. "Madam." She stood slowly, gripping the altar rail for support as though her legs might give out beneath her. "I have been praying for hours. I did not know what else to do. I asked God to send me help, someone who could save my family, and then you walked through that door." He took a step back, shaking his head. "I think you have the wrong idea about me, madam. I am not anybody's miracle. I am just a man who needed to get off the road for a while." "What is your name?" she asked, moving toward him with a determination that seemed at odds with her earlier despair. "Ryder Lawson. I am Clara Emerson." She extended her hand, and after a moment's hesitation he shook it. Her grip was firm despite the trembling in her fingers. "Please, Mr. Lawson, I know this must seem strange, but I need your help. My family needs your help." Ryder pulled his hand back and ran it through his hair. "Miss Emerson, I am not in a position to help anyone right now. I'm just passing through town." "Are you a gunfighter?" The question was so direct it caught him off guard. "I have been called that." "Good. That is what I need." She glanced toward the door as though afraid someone might overhear. "My father owns a ranch about 10 miles west of here. 3 months ago, a man named Jacob Pierce came to town and started buying up land. He wants our ranch, but my father refused to sell. Since then, Pierce's men have been terrorizing us. They have cut our fences, poisoned our water supply, and last week they burned down our barn. My brother tried to stop them, and they beat him so badly he can barely walk. My father went to the sheriff, but Pierce has him in his pocket. No one in town will help us because they are all afraid of what Pierce will do to them." Ryder had heard this story before, or variations of it, in a dozen different towns. There was always a rich man who wanted more, and there were always people who got hurt when they stood in his way. "I am sorry for your troubles, but this is not my fight." "How much do you want?" Clara asked, and there was a desperate edge to her voice now. "We do not have much, but I can pay you. My mother had some jewelry, I can give you that. It is not about money." "Then what is it about?" He met her eyes, and for a moment he considered telling her the truth. That he was tired of fighting. That he had seen too much blood and caused too much pain. That every time he pulled his gun, a piece of his soul died with the man on the other end. But he did not say any of that because he knew it would not matter. Men like him did not get to retire. They did not get to walk away and build a different life. They just kept going until someone faster came along. "I am sorry," he said again, and he meant it. He turned toward the door. "My sister is going to die." The word stopped him cold. "She is 14 years old," Clara continued, her voice breaking. 2 days ago, she was riding back from town when 3 of Pierce's men stopped her on the road. They did not hurt her, but they frightened her badly. She has not spoken since. She just sits in her room and stares at the wall. The doctor says it is shock and that she needs rest and peace to recover. But we cannot give her that, not while Pierce's men are circling our ranch like wolves. My father is too old to fight them off, and my brother is too injured. It is just me trying to hold everything together, and I do not know how much longer I can do it." Ryder closed his eyes. He thought about riding out of town and never looking back. He thought about all the reasons why this was not his problem. And then he thought about a 14-year-old girl too frightened to speak, and he knew he was not going anywhere. "1 week," he said, turning back to face her. "I will give you 1 week to figure out a more permanent solution. I will go to your ranch and make sure Pierce's men know you have protection. Maybe that will be enough to make them back off." The relief that flooded Clara's face was almost painful to see. Thank you so much." "Do not thank me yet. I have not done anything." "You have done more than you know. You have given me hope." She wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Can you ride out with me now? My horse is tied up outside. I need to get my horse from the livery and pick up some supplies. I will meet you at the edge of town in an hour." She nodded eagerly. "There is a big cottonwood tree at the west end of Main Street. I will wait for you there." As she hurried past him toward the door, he caught her arm gently. "Miss Emerson, I need you to understand something. If I do this, there is a good chance things will get worse before they get better. Men like Pierce do not back down easy. They push back." "I know," she said quietly. "But right now, getting worse is better than staying the same. At least if things get worse, we are moving forward. Right now, we are just dying slowly." He let her go and watched as she disappeared through the door into the fading daylight. Then he stood alone in the empty chapel, wondering what he had just agreed to and whether he would live long enough to regret it. The ride out to the Emerson ranch took them through some of the most beautiful country Ryder had ever seen. The Arkansas River Valley was flanked by towering mountains still capped with snow despite the lateness of summer. Pine forests covered the lower slopes, and the valley floor was a patchwork of green meadows and golden aspens. Under different circumstances, he would have enjoyed the scenery. Instead, he kept his eyes moving, scanning the tree line and the distant ridges for any sign of trouble. Clara rode beside him on a sturdy bay mare, sitting straight in the saddle despite the exhaustion that lined her face. She had not said much since they left town, but he could feel her watching him from time to time, as though she was trying to figure out what kind of man she had just hired. "How long have you been praying in that chapel?" he asked, more to break the silence than out of real curiosity. 3 hours, maybe 4. I lost track of time. I rode into town this morning hoping to find someone willing to help us, but everyone turned me away. Finally, I just went to the chapel because I did not know what else to do. You believe in that? Prayer? I did not used to, she admitted. At least not the way my mother did. She prayed every day for everything, for rain, for good harvests, for healthy animals. I always thought it was just something people did to make themselves feel better. But when she died last year, I started praying too. Not because I thought it would change anything, but because it made me feel closer to her. I am sorry about your mother. She would have liked you, Clara said with a sad smile. She always said that God put people in our path exactly when we needed them most. I never believed her until today. Ryder did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They crested a ridge and the Emerson ranch came into view below them. It was a modest operation, a 2-story farmhouse with a wide porch, a cookhouse, a small bunkhouse and several corrals. The barn Clara had mentioned was nothing but a blackened skeleton, the charred timbers stark against the green meadow. A few cattle grazed in the distance, but not nearly as many as there should have been for a ranch this size. It used to be beautiful, Clara said softly, before all this started. As they rode down the slope, Ryder noticed a man standing on the porch with a rifle cradled in his arms. He was in his late 50s with gray hair and a weathered face that spoke of decades spent working under the sun. His stance was defensive, and the rifle came up slightly as they approached. "It is me, Papa," Clara called out, "and I brought help." The man's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion as they drew closer. "Clara, what have you done?" They dismounted and Clara quickly made introductions. "Papa, this is Ryder Lawson. He has agreed to help us with our Pierce problem." "Mr. Lawson, this is my father, Charles Emerson." Charles looked Ryder up and down, taking in the worn gun belt and the hard edge that came from too many years on the wrong side of easy. "I appreciate the thought, daughter, but we cannot afford to hire a gunfighter." "He did not ask for much," Clara said quickly, which was not exactly a lie since Ryder had not asked for anything at all. "How much?" Charles asked, directing the question at Ryder. "We can discuss payment later," Ryder said. "Right now, I would like to hear more about Jacob Pierce and his men." "How many are we talking about?" Charles lowered the rifle slightly, still wary but willing to talk. "Pierce has about a dozen men on his payroll, though only 5 or 6 of them are real gunslingers. The rest are just ranch hands and drifters looking for easy money. The ones you need to worry about are Grady Cole, Sam Bishop, and a half-breed they call Snake. Cole is the fastest gun I have ever seen, and Snake is just plain mean." "Have they killed anyone yet?" "Not that I can prove, but a neighbor of ours named Tom Richardson disappeared 2 months ago after he refused to sell his land to Pierce. They found his horse wandering loose, but never found Tom." "What about the law?" Charles spit on the ground in disgust. "Sheriff Dalton is in Pierce's pocket. Even if he was not, he is too much of a coward to stand up to Cole and his boys." A young man emerged from the house, moving slowly and obviously in pain. He was probably 19 or 20, with the same auburn hair as his sister and a face that was still swollen and bruised from his recent beating. "Who is this?" he asked, eyeing Ryder with suspicion. "This is Ryder Lawson," Clara said. "He is going to help us." "We do not need help from hired guns," the young man said. "I can handle Pierce." "Thomas, you can barely walk," Clara said gently. "I am fine." But even as he said it, Thomas winced and put a hand to his ribs. "You are not fine," Charles said. "You have got 3 broken ribs and a concussion. You are not handling anything except getting better." Thomas looked like he wanted to argue, but the pain must have been too much. He retreated back into the house without another word. "He is a good boy," Charles said quietly, "but he has got more pride than sense. He tried to fight off 4 of Pierce's men by himself. It is a miracle they did not kill him." "Where is your younger daughter?" Ryder asked. "Inside with her aunt. My sister came to stay with us after the incident on the road. She has been trying to get Emma to eat, but the girl barely touches her food." The pain in Charles's voice was evident. "I should have sent them away when this started, sent them somewhere safe, but this is our home. This is everything my wife and I built together. I did not want to just hand it over to some bully." "You should not have to," Ryder said. "But we need to be smart about this. Pierce is testing you, seeing how far he can push before you break. He burns your barn, beats your son, scares your daughter. He is waiting for you to either fight back or run away. Either way, he wins. So what do? We show him that the game has changed, that you are not alone anymore, and that there will be consequences if his men keep coming around." Charles studied Ryder for a long moment. "You have done this before." "Yes." "And how did it end?" Ryder met his gaze steadily. "Sometimes it ended with the bully backing down. Sometimes it ended with gunfire, but it always ended." The older man nodded slowly. "All right then. You can bunk in the bunkhouse. It is not much, but it is dry and there are spare blankets. Clara will show you where everything is." As Charles headed back into the house, Ryder turned to find Clara watching him with an expression he could not quite read. There was gratitude there, certainly, but also something else. Something that made him uncomfortable in a way that had nothing to do with Pierce or his hired guns. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for agreeing to stay, for giving us a chance. Do not get your hopes up too high," he warned. "I have seen situations like this go bad in a hurry." "I know. But at least now we are not facing it alone." She led him to the bunkhouse, a long, low building with a row of cots along each wall. It smelled of dust and old straw, but it was cleaner than many places he had stayed. Clara showed him where the water pump was, where they kept the firewood, and where the cookhouse was for meals. "We eat at 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening," she said. "Nothing fancy, but there is always enough. You are welcome to join us in the main house, or you can eat in the cookhouse if you prefer." "The cookhouse is fine." She nodded, lingering in the doorway as though there was something else she wanted to say. Finally she asked, "Do you really think we have a chance?" He could have lied. Could have told her everything would be fine, and that Pierce would back off as soon as he saw that the Emersons had hired protection. But Clara deserved better than empty promises. "I think you have a better chance than you did this morning," he said carefully. "But a lot depends on what Pierce does next and how far he is willing to go to get what he wants." "He is willing to go pretty far," she said quietly. "He wants this land bad enough to hurt children. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of man he is. Then we will just have to make sure he knows that hurting your family comes with a price." She smiled then, a real smile that reached her eyes. "You know, when I first saw you in the chapel, I thought you looked dangerous, but now I think maybe you are just what we need." After she left, Ryder unpacked his few belongings and checked his weapons. He had a Colt revolver, a Winchester rifle, and a knife he kept in his boot. It was not much of an arsenal, but he had learned long ago that it was not about how many guns you had. It was about knowing when to use them. He was cleaning the colt when he heard footsteps outside. The door opened and Thomas limped in, his face set in a stubborn expression that Ryder recognized all too well. He had worn that same expression himself when he was young and thought courage meant never backing down. "I do not like this," Thomas said without preamble. "My sister hiring a stranger to fight our battles." "Your sister did not hire me," Ryder said, not looking up from his work. "She asked for help and I agreed to give it. There is a difference." What kind of man agrees to help people he does not even know? Maybe the kind who has been on the other side of that equation and wishes someone had helped him. Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Clara said you walked into the chapel right after she finished praying. She thinks that means something. Your sister has had a hard few months. She is looking for hope wherever she can find it. Are you telling me you are not worth hoping for?" Ryder finally looked up at the young man. "I am telling you that I am just a man, not a miracle. I can help you stand up to Pierce, but I cannot promise you will come out of this unscathed, none of you. I am not afraid of Pierce or his men." "Then you are a fool. Fear keeps you alive. It makes you careful. What you should be is prepared, not fearless." Thomas shifted his weight and winced again. "Clara said you were a gunfighter. How many men have you killed?" "Too many." "Do you regret it?" Ryder set down the colt and met Thomas's eyes. "Every single one, even the ones who deserved it. Even the ones who would have killed me if I had not killed them first. You do not walk away from that kind of thing unchanged. Then why do you keep doing it?" "Because I do not know how to do anything else. Because somewhere along the way this became who I am. But you still have a choice, kid. You can be something better than what I became. So when this is over and Pierce is gone, you put down your gun and you build something. You raise cattle, you get married, you have children. You become the kind of man your father is, not the kind I am." Thomas nodded slowly and some of the hostility faded from his expression. "My father is a good man. I can see that. Clara is a good woman too, the best I know. She has been holding this family together since my mother died. I do not know what we would have done without her. She seems strong. She is. But she should not have to be this strong. She should be thinking about her own future, finding a husband, starting her own family. Instead, she is fighting to save ours." After Thomas left, Ryder finished cleaning his weapons and then walked the perimeter of the ranch. He noted the cut fences Clara had mentioned, the places where cattle could easily wander off or be stolen. He checked the sight lines from the house and the bunkhouse, looking for places where attackers might approach under cover. He examined the remains of the barn, noting how thoroughly it had been burned and how close it was to the other buildings. Pierce's men had been making a point. They could have burned down the house just as easily. As the sun set and darkness settled over the valley, Ryder found himself thinking about Clara and the way she had looked at him in the chapel. Like he was the answer to a prayer instead of just another lost soul stumbling through the darkness. He did not want that responsibility. Did not want to be anyone's savior or hero. But he had made a promise and he would keep it, even if it killed him. The next morning, Ryder was up before dawn, a habit from his years in the army that he had never been able to break. He washed up at the pump and was walking toward the cookhouse when he saw Clara coming out of the main house with a basket on her arm. She wore the same faded blue dress from the day before, but she had put her hair up in a way that made her look older, more severe. "Good morning, Mr. Lawson," she called out. "I was just bringing some breakfast down to the cookhouse." "You do not have to do that, I know, but I wanted to." She gestured for him to follow her and he fell into step beside her. "Did you sleep well enough?" "I am glad." "I worried that the bunkhouse might be too cold. It gets chilly up here in the mountains at night, even in summer." They reached the cookhouse, a small building with a cast iron stove and a long wooden table. Clara set down her basket and began unpacking fresh bread, butter, preserves, and a pot of coffee that was still steaming. "It is not much, but it is hot." "It is more than I usually get," Ryder said, accepting the plate she handed him. "Most mornings I am lucky to have jerky and water." She poured coffee into 2 tin cups and sat down across from him. "How long have you been living that way? On the road, I mean." "About 8 years now, since I left Texas." "Do you miss it?" "Having a home," he considered the question while he ate. The bread was good, clearly fresh baked that morning. "Sometimes. Mostly I miss the idea of it more than the reality. I never really had much of a home to begin with." "What about family?" "My parents died when I was 12. Cholera epidemics swept through our town. After that, I bounced around between relatives who did not really want me until I was old enough to work. Signed on with a cattle drive when I was 15 and never went back." "I am sorry," Clara said softly. "That must have been hard. It was a long time ago, still. Everyone deserves to have people who care about them. Everyone deserves to belong somewhere." He looked at her over the rim of his coffee cup. "Is that what you have here? A place where you belong?" "I thought I did. Before my mother died, before Pierce started his campaign against us, this ranch felt like the center of the universe. It was everything I knew and everything I wanted. But now I am not so sure anymore. Sometimes I think about what would happen if we lost this place. Where would we go? What would we do? And then I feel guilty for even thinking about it because I know how hard my father has fought to hold on to it. Having doubts does not make you weak. It makes you human." She smiled at that. "Thank you for saying so. Most people just tell me to have faith and keep praying." "Faith is good, but sometimes you need more than faith. Sometimes you need a plan." "And do you have a plan for dealing with Pierce?" "The beginnings of one. I want to ride into town today and get a look at him and his operation, see what we are really up against." "Would you be willing to come with me?" "Of course. But why do you need me?" "Because I am a stranger in town. People will be suspicious if I start asking questions about Pierce. But if I am with you, it looks like I am just the hired help." She nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense." "When do you want to leave?" "In about an hour. That will give us time to take care of the morning chores and get to town by mid-morning." They rode into Salida together on a bright, clear morning that made the previous day's troubles feel almost unreal. The town was bustling with activity. Miners heading up into the hills, freight wagons rumbling down Main Street, women shopping at the general store. It looked like any other frontier town trying to civilize itself at the edge of wilderness. But Ryder noticed the undercurrents immediately. The way people's eyes skittered away when they saw Clara. The way conversation stopped when they passed. The town knew the Emersons were in trouble, and they had all decided it was safer to look the other way. "Where does Pierce operate from?" Ryder asked quietly. "He owns the Silver Queen Saloon on the south end of town. That is where his men gather. He also bought the old mining office and turned it into his headquarters. He claims he is running a legitimate business, buying land and investing in the town's future, but everyone knows he is just a glorified bully." "Show me the saloon first." They rode slowly down Main Street until they reached the Silver Queen. It was an impressive building by Salida standards. 2 stories tall with a fresh coat of white paint and glass windows, instead of the oiled paper or wooden shutters that most buildings had. A dozen horses were tied up outside, and even from the street, Ryder could hear laughter and the clink of glasses inside. "That is Cole's horse," Clara said, nodding toward a big black stallion. "And the roan belongs to Bishop. I do not see Snake's mount, so maybe he is out causing trouble somewhere else." As if summoned by the mention of his name, a man emerged from the saloon and stood on the boardwalk, staring directly at them. He was tall and lean with cold blue eyes and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He wore 2 guns, one on each hip, and his hand rested casually on the butt of the right one. "That is Cole," Clara whispered. Grady Cole studied them for a long moment, his gaze lingering on Ryder with the kind of professional interest one gunfighter gives another. Then he smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Miss Emerson," he called out, "what brings you to town? Come to accept Mr. Pierce's generous offer." "Just doing some shopping, Mr. Cole," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the tension Ryder could feel radiating from her. "Who is your friend? Do not believe I have seen him around before. Just someone passing through. Is that so?" Cole stepped down from the boardwalk and walked toward them with a loose, confident stride. "Funny thing about that. Mr. Pierce does not much like strangers passing through and sticking their noses where they do not belong. Makes him nervous." Ryder finally spoke, his voice flat and uninflected. "I am not sticking my nose anywhere. Like the lady said, I am just passing through." Cole came to a stop about 10 feet away, close enough to talk but far enough to have room to draw if it came to that. "You look like a man who knows his way around that iron on your hip. You look like a man who might be thinking about involving himself in business that is not his concern." "I look like a lot of things, does not mean I am any of them." "Huh." Cole tilted his head, still smiling that cold smile. "What is your name, friend?" "Ryder Lawson." Something flickered in Cole's eyes. "Recognition, maybe." "Lawson. Heard that name before. You did some work up in Wyoming Territory a few years back. Something about a range war near Cheyenne." "I have worked a lot of places." "I bet you have." "Well, Mr. Lawson, let me give you some friendly advice. Salida is a nice, quiet town, and we would like to keep it that way. The Emerson family has been having some unfortunate troubles lately, and it would be a shame if those troubles extended to people who have no stake in the situation. If you get my meaning." "I get it just fine." "Good. Then we understand each other." Cole touched the brim of his hat toward Clara. "Always a pleasure, Miss Emerson. You tell your daddy that Mr. Pierce's offer is still on the table. In fact, it might be smart to take it before something worse than a barn fire happens." He turned and walked back into the saloon, but Ryder knew they were still being watched, probably from every window in the building. "We should go," Clara said quietly, "before they decide to make more trouble." They spent the next hour moving through town, stopping at the general store for supplies and the feed store to order grain. At each stop, Ryder paid attention to the conversations around them and the way people reacted when they saw Clara. Most were sympathetic, but unhelpful. A few were openly hostile, clearly viewing the Emersons as troublemakers who were bad for business. At the general store, an older woman approached Clara while Ryder was examining some ammunition. "Clara dear, how is your father holding up?" "As well as can be expected, Mrs. Patterson." "Thank you for asking. I heard about what happened to Emma. Such a terrible thing. Is she doing any better?" "Not really, no. I am so sorry." Mrs. Patterson glanced toward Ryder and lowered her voice. "Is that man with you? Are you in some kind of trouble?" "No, no trouble. He is just helping out at the ranch for a while." "Clara, you know I think the world of your family, but I have to be honest with you. Pierce is not going to stop until he gets what he wants. Maybe it would be better to just sell and move on. Start fresh somewhere else where you will be safe." Clara's expression hardened. "That ranch is all we have left of my mother. I am not giving it up without a fight. Sometimes fighting is not worth the cost, and sometimes running is not worth the price you pay in your soul." Mrs. Patterson sighed and patted Clara's hand. "You always were stubborn, just like your mother. I hope that stubbornness does not get you killed." They finished their shopping and were heading back toward their horses when a man in an expensive suit emerged from the mining office Clara had pointed out earlier. He was in his 40s with slicked back hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from having money and power, and when he saw Clara, his face lit up with a smile that made Ryder's skin crawl. "Miss Emerson," the man called out, hurrying toward them. What a delightful surprise. "Mr. Pierce," Clara said stiffly. So this was Jacob Pierce. Ryder studied him carefully, taking in the expensive clothes, the gold watch chain, the soft hands that had never done a day of manual labor. He was exactly what Ryder had expected. A man who used money and hired guns to get what he wanted because he did not have the courage or strength to do it himself. "I was just thinking about you," Pierce said smoothly. "In fact, I was planning to ride out to your ranch this afternoon to speak with your father again. I have been reviewing my offer, and I think I can sweeten it considerably. Perhaps enough to make it worth your family's while to relocate to somewhere more suitable." "Our ranch is perfectly suitable," Clara said coldly, "and we are not interested in any offer, generous or otherwise." Pierce's smile never wavered, but his eyes hardened. "Miss Emerson, I admire your loyalty to your family. Truly, I do, but you must understand that business is business. This valley is primed for development, and your ranch sits on some of the most valuable land in the region. I am offering you and your family a way out that allows you to maintain your dignity and your financial security. Many people in your position would jump at such an opportunity. Then find those people and make them your offer. Leave us alone. I am afraid I cannot do that. You see, I have already made commitments to investors based on the assumption that I will control that particular piece of property. If I fail to deliver, well, let's just say there will be consequences. Significant consequences. That sounds like a personal problem, Mr. Pierce, not ours." Pierce's smile finally slipped. "You are making a mistake. Your father is making a mistake. Surely you can see that this situation cannot continue indefinitely. Eventually, someone is going to get seriously hurt. I would hate for that someone to be you or your sister." Ryder stepped forward, putting himself slightly between Clara and Pierce. "The lady asked you to leave her family alone. Seems pretty clear to me." Pierce turned his attention to Ryder, and the mask of civility dropped completely. "And who might you be?" "Nobody important. Just someone who does not like seeing women threatened." "Threatened? My dear sir, you misunderstand. I am simply a businessman trying to conduct business. There is no threat here, implied or otherwise." "Funny. Sounded like a threat to me." Pierce studied Ryder for a long moment, and then his smile returned, colder than before. "Ah, I see. You are the mysterious helper that Miss Emerson has apparently acquired. Grady mentioned something about a stranger in town. Lawson, was it?" "That is right." "Well, Mr. Lawson, I appreciate that you are trying to be helpful, but you really do not understand the complexities of the situation. This is a matter between myself and the Emerson family. An outsider inserting himself into the equation only complicates things." "Maybe. Or maybe it simplifies things. Maybe it lets you know that if you want that land, you are going to have to work harder for it." "Is that so?" Pierce glanced at Clara, then back at Ryder. "Miss Emerson, I do hope you have not done something foolish like hiring a gunfighter. That would be a serious escalation, and escalations can spiral out of control very quickly." "Mr. Lawson is a ranch hand," Clara said. "Nothing more. Of course he is." Pierce adjusted his coat and straightened his hat. "Well, I will let you two get back to your errands. But please, Miss Emerson, do think about what I have said. The clock is ticking, and I would hate to see your family run out of time." He walked away, and Ryder watched him go, memorizing the man's walk, his mannerisms, everything that might be useful later. "That man makes my skin crawl," Clara said quietly. "Good. That means your instincts are working. He is dangerous, Clara, maybe more dangerous than his hired guns. What do we do now? Now we go back to the ranch and we get ready. Because I guarantee you that Pierce is not going to let this go. He will push back probably soon, and we need to be ready when he does. They rode back to the Emerson ranch in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Ryder kept scanning the hills and tree lines, looking for signs of an ambush. Pierce had to know by now that the Emersons had hired protection, and that changed the equation significantly. The question was whether Pierce would back off or double down. When they arrived back at the ranch, they found Charles and Thomas in the yard, examining one of the cut fences. Thomas looked up as they approached, and even from a distance, Ryder could see the worry on his face. "Papa found more fences cut this morning," Thomas said as they dismounted. "6 sections on the North Range. We have got cattle wandering all over the valley." "They came during the night," Charles added grimly. "I am a light sleeper and I did not hear a thing. They are getting bolder." "Or they are trying to spread us thin," Ryder said. "Keep us running around fixing fences while they plan something bigger." "What do you suggest?" "Leave the fences for now. Gather the cattle you can easily find and pen them up close to the house. Station someone on watch at all times. If Pierce's men come back, I want to know about it before they can do any damage." Charles nodded slowly. "All right." "Thomas, go tell your aunt what is happening and have her keep Emma inside. Clara, you help me with the cattle. Mr. Lawson, you should probably get some rest. Something tells me we are going to need you fresh." But Ryder did not rest. Instead, he spent the afternoon preparing. He checked every door and window in the house, looking for weak points. He examined the barn site again, thinking about firing lines and cover positions. He walked the entire perimeter of the ranch, making note of every approach route and every place an attacker might hide. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Clara found him standing on a low ridge overlooking the ranch. She climbed up to join him, slightly breathless from the climb. "You have been working all day," she said. "You should eat something, in a minute." "I wanted to see the layout one more time while there was still light." She stood beside him, looking out over the land her family had built. "It is beautiful, is it not? Even with everything that has happened, I still think it is the most beautiful place in the world." "It is good land," Ryder agreed. "I can see why Pierce wants it. He does not want it because it is beautiful. He wants it because he thinks he can make money from it. To him, this is just property, just another business opportunity. He does not see what we see." "What do you see?" "Home. Family. My mother's grave on the hillside under the big pine tree. My first horse buried in the meadow near the creek. The tree Thomas fell out of when he was 7 and broke his arm. The place where Emma learned to ride. Every inch of this land has a story, a memory. That is what Pierce can never understand." Ryder turned to look at her, struck by the passion in her voice and the fierce love in her eyes. In that moment, she was not just a woman in need of protection. She was a warrior fighting for everything that mattered. And that made her more dangerous than any gunfighter. "You are remarkable," he said quietly, and then immediately wished he had not. She blinked, surprised. "What?" "Nothing. We should head back. It is getting dark." But she caught his arm as he turned to go. "No, what did you mean?" He hesitated, knowing he should deflect, should put distance between them before this became more complicated than it already was. But when he looked into her green eyes, he found he could not lie to her. "I meant that I have seen a lot of people in your situation, and most of them either run away or get so consumed by fear that they become paralyzed. But you are not doing either of those things. You are standing and fighting, even though you are scared, even though you do not know if you will win. That takes a special kind of courage. I do not feel courageous. Most of the time I just feel terrified, Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Is that how you live, despite your fear? I do not know if I would call what I do living. More like existing, moving from one fight to the next, never putting down roots, never letting anyone get too close. That sounds lonely. It is, but it is safer this way, for me and for anyone who might care about me. Why safer? He looked away from her, out across the darkening valley. Because people around me have a habit of getting hurt. Because every time I care about something, I lose it. It is easier to just not care. I do not believe that, Clara said softly. I think you care very much. I think that is why you are here, despite telling yourself you are just passing through. Despite insisting you are not anybody's miracle. You care about what happens to us, and that scares you more than Grady Cole or Jacob Pierce ever could. You do not know me well enough to make that judgment. Maybe not. But I know what I saw in that chapel yesterday. A man who was tired and running from something, who had every reason to keep on riding. But he stopped. He listened. And he agreed to help, even though there was nothing in it for him. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Before he could respond, a shout came from the direction of the house. They both turned and ran down the ridge, Clara lifting her skirts to keep from tripping. When they reached the yard, they found Thomas standing by the water pump, holding a piece of paper. It was nailed to the bunkhouse door, Thomas said, handing it to Ryder. I just found it. Ryder unfolded the paper and read the message scrawled in rough handwriting. Lawson. Leave town by tomorrow night or the girl dies. This is your only warning. Cole. Clara gasped when she read it over his shoulder. They are threatening Emma. They are trying to scare us, Ryder said, keeping his voice calm even as anger burned in his chest. They want us to panic. Well, it is working, Thomas said. What do? We do exactly what we have been doing. We stay alert, we stay together, and we do not let them see that we are rattled. Charles came out of the house, followed by a thin woman in her 40s who Ryder assumed was Clara's aunt. What is going on? Charles demanded. Ryder handed him the note. Charles read it and his face went pale. They are threatening Emma. I will not let anything happen to her, Ryder said. Or to any of you, but we need to be smart. From now on, Emma does not leave the house. In fact, I think it would be best if none of you ventured far from the buildings unless you have to. What about you? Clara asked. They told you to leave town. What if they come after you? Let them try. I have been shot at before. I know how to take care of myself. This is my fault, Charles said heavily. I should have sold when Pierce first made his offer, before anyone got hurt, before it came to this. Papa, no, Clara said, taking his arm. This is not your fault. Pierce is a bully and bullies only understand one thing. If we give in now, it sends a message that anyone with enough money and guns can take whatever they want. We have to stand up to him, for ourselves, and for everyone else he will hurt if we do not. Your sister is right, the aunt said quietly. She had not spoken before, and Ryder turned to look at her properly for the first time. She had Clara's green eyes, but there was a hardness to her that spoke of her own difficult experiences. I lost my husband to men like Pierce. Claim jumpers who killed him and took the mine he had spent 3 years developing. The law did nothing because the claim jumpers had connections. I will not see my nieces and nephews suffer the same fate. What are you suggesting, Margaret? Charles asked. I am suggesting that we trust Mr. Lawson, and we do whatever he says we need to do to end this, one way or another. That night, Ryder took first watch, positioning himself on the porch with a clear view of the approaches to the house. The moon was nearly full, casting silvery light across the meadows and making the shadows beneath the trees seem even darker by contrast. He kept the Winchester across his knees and his Colt loose in its holster. Around midnight, Clara emerged from the house with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and sat down on the porch steps beside his chair. "You should be sleeping," he said, "so should you. I will sleep when this is over. If you do not rest, you will be no good to anyone when Pierce's men do come. I've gone longer without sleep." She sipped her coffee, staring out at the moonlit landscape. "Emma spoke today. Just a few words, but it is the first time since the incident on the road. That is good." "What did she say?" She asked if the bad men were going to come back. "I told her no, that you were here to protect us." "She asked if you were brave. I told her yes, you were the bravest man I had ever met." "You should not tell her things like that. I am not brave. I am just someone who has been scared so long he has forgotten what it feels like to be anything else." Clara turned to look at him, her face half in shadow. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "What are you really running from? It is not just that gunfight in Leadville, is it? There is something deeper." He was quiet for a long time, debating how much to tell her. Finally, he said, "About 3 years ago, I was working as a guard for a bank in a little town in New Mexico territory. A gang tried to rob the place, and there was a shootout. I killed 3 of the robbers, but during the fight, a stray bullet hit a woman who was walking past the bank. She died instantly. She was 22 years old, newly married, 2 months pregnant. Oh, Ryder. The inquest ruled it was not my fault. They said I was defending the bank, and the woman was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But that did not change the fact that she was dead and I had pulled the trigger. I never found out who actually shot her, me or one of the robbers, but it did not matter. She was dead either way. That was not your fault. Maybe not. But it happened because of me, because of the life I chose, and I swore after that I would not let myself care about people anymore, that I would just do my job and move on before anyone else got hurt. And yet here you are." "Here I am," he agreed wearily. "Breaking my own rules. I am glad you are. We need you. I need you." The way she said it, soft and sincere, made something in his chest ache. He wanted to tell her not to need him, wanted to warn her that he was no good at being what anyone needed. But before he could speak, she stood up and kissed his forehead, so gentle it might have been a dream. "Get some rest, Ryder. I will take watch for a few hours. Clara, you do not know how to. I grew up on this ranch. I have been shooting since I was 10 years old, and I know every sound this valley makes at night. If anything moves out there that should not be moving, I will know. Now go sleep for a few hours. That is an order." She took the rifle from his hands before he could protest, and he found himself too tired to argue. He retreated to the bunkhouse and collapsed on the nearest cot, asleep almost before his head hit the pillow. He woke at dawn to the sound of shouting. Ryder was on his feet and out the door in seconds, his gun in his hand. In the gray light of early morning, he could see Thomas and Charles standing by the remains of the barn, staring at something Ryder could not yet see. Clara was running toward them from the house, her hair loose and her face pale. When Ryder reached them, he saw what had caused the commotion. Someone had taken what was left of the barn timbers and arranged them into a crude gallows, complete with a rope noose hanging from the crossbeam. Beneath the noose was a sign that read, "Tomorrow." "They were here," Charles said, his voice shaking. "Right here in our yard while we slept, and we did not hear a thing." "They are trying to terrorize us," Ryder said, though his own heart was pounding. This was escalating faster than he had anticipated. "Thomas, tear that thing down and burn it. Charles, Clara, check the house and make sure everyone is accounted for." He walked in a slow circle around the gallows, studying the ground. There were hoofprints, maybe 3 or 4 horses. They had come from the north, riding through the creek to muffle the sound of their approach. It was professional work, the kind of thing men who knew what they were doing would plan. Clara returned a few minutes later. Everyone is fine. Emma did not see it, thank God. She is still sleeping. Good, keep her inside. Do not let her see any of this. Ryder, they were in our yard. While we were sleeping, they were right here. They could have killed us all. But they did not. Because Pierce does not want you dead, at least not yet. He wants you scared enough to sell. This is psychological warfare, and it is working. So what do? We cannot just sit here and wait for them to pick us off one by one. No, we cannot. He had been thinking about this since yesterday, turning it over in his mind. It is time to change tactics. Instead of waiting for them to come to us, we are going to take the fight to them. How? By making Pierce understand that there are consequences for what his men are doing. By hitting back hard enough that he has to reconsider whether this land is worth the trouble. You are talking about going after his men. I am talking about defending your family in the most effective way possible. Pierce's hired guns think they can push you around because you are just ranchers, not fighters. We need to show them they are wrong. Charles joined them, his face grim. I heard that, and I agree. We have been playing defense this whole time, just reacting to whatever Pierce throws at us. It is time to push back. Papa, that is dangerous, Clara protested. If we go after Pierce's men, people could get killed. People are going to get killed anyway if this keeps up, Charles said. At least this way we are not just sitting here waiting for it to happen. Mr. Lawson, what do you have in mind? Tonight, after dark, I am going to ride into town and have a conversation with Grady Cole. The kind of conversation he understands. I am coming with you, Thomas said immediately. No, you are not. You are still recovering from broken ribs. I need you here protecting your family. Then I will go, Charles said. With all due respect, sir, this is not the kind of work you are suited for. This is going to get ugly, and it requires someone who knows how to handle that kind of situation. So you are just going to ride into town alone and confront a professional gunfighter. Clara's voice rose with frustration. That is suicide. Maybe, but it is better than waiting for them to make the next move. Right now they think they hold all the cards. We need to show them they are wrong. The rest of the day passed in tense preparation. Ryder cleaned and checked his weapons. He studied the layout of Salida in his mind, planning his approach and his escape routes. He ate a large meal, not knowing when he would get another chance. And he tried very hard not to think about the way Clara kept watching him with worry in her eyes. As evening approached, she cornered him in the barn where he was saddling his horse. You do not have to do this. Yes, I do. Why, this is not your fight. This is not your family. You could ride away right now and no one would blame you. I would blame me. He tightened the cinch and turned to face her. Clara, I have spent the last 3 years running from one place to another, never staying long enough to matter, never letting myself care because it was easier than risking getting hurt. But somewhere between that chapel and this barn, I started caring. About you, about your family, about this place. And I cannot just walk away from that. Then let me come with you. Absolutely not. Ryder, I can shoot, I can help. I know you can. But if something goes wrong, your family needs you here. They need you to keep them together, keep them strong. That is your job. Mine is to make sure Pierce's men know that terrorizing innocents comes with a price. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers small and warm in his. Promise me you will come back. I cannot promise that. Then promise me you will try. He looked down at their joined hands, then up into her eyes. I promise I will try. She pulled him closer, rising on her toes, and kissed him. It was not the gentle kiss she had given him the night before. This was fierce and desperate, full of fear and longing and all the things neither of them had said aloud. He kissed her back, his arms coming around her, holding her tight enough that he could feel her heart beating against his chest. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "What was that for?" he asked. "For luck. And because I needed you to know that I care too about you, about whatever this is between us. Clara, I know. I know you think you are no good for me, that you are just going to get me hurt, but you do not get to decide that for me. I make my own choices and I choose to care about you, so you better come back so we can figure out what that means." He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that this could not work, that he was all wrong for her, but the look in her eyes stopped him. So instead, he kissed her once more, soft and gentle, trying to say with his lips what he could not put into words. Then he mounted his horse and rode away into the gathering darkness, very aware that this might be the last time he saw her alive. The ride into Salida took less than an hour. Ryder approached from the north, avoiding the main road and keeping to the shadows. He left his horse tied in an alley behind the feed store and made his way on foot toward the Silver Queen saloon. It was a Saturday night, and the saloon was busy. Piano music and raucous laughter spilled out into the street. Through the windows, Ryder could see men drinking and gambling, women in fancy dresses moving between the tables. It looked like a normal frontier saloon, but he knew better. This was the heart of Pierce's operation, and somewhere inside was Grady Cole. He pushed through the swinging doors and stepped inside, letting his eyes adjust to the lamplight and tobacco smoke. Conversations did not stop, but he felt the shift in attention as people noticed him. A stranger in a small town always drew interest, and a stranger wearing a gun drew even more. He spotted Cole almost immediately. The gunfighter was sitting at a corner table with 3 other men, playing cards. When Cole saw Ryder, he set down his cards and stood slowly, his hand hovering near his gun. "Well, well," Cole said, his voice carrying across the room. "Mr. Lawson, I thought I told you to leave town. You told me. I decided not to listen." The saloon went quiet. Someone turned off the piano. Ryder was aware of people backing away, clearing a space around him and Cole. This was the moment that could go one of 2 ways. "That was not a request," Cole said. "That was an order. I do not take orders from you." "No, but you will die because of me if you do not walk out that door right now and keep riding." "I am not going anywhere, and you are going to deliver a message to Jacob Pierce for me." Cole laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that so? And what message would that be?" "Tell him the Emerson family is under my protection now. Tell him that if any of his men set foot on their land again, if they so much as look at any member of that family wrong, I will come for him. Not his hired guns, him. And I will make sure he regrets ever hearing the name Emerson." Big words for one man. I have backed up bigger words before. Cole studied him for a long moment, and Ryder knew the gunfighter was weighing his options. Cole could draw right now and they could settle this with bullets. Or he could back down and deliver the message, preserving the standoff for another day. "You are making a mistake," Cole said finally. "Pierce is not a man you want as an enemy. Neither am I. We will see about that." Cole sat back down and picked up his cards. "Now get out of my saloon before I change my mind about letting you walk out alive." Ryder held his ground for another few seconds, making sure everyone in the room understood that he was leaving by choice, not because he was afraid. Then he turned and walked toward the door, very conscious of the exposed target his back presented. He was halfway across the room when someone stepped into his path. It was a man he had not noticed before, shorter than Cole but just as dangerous looking. He had black hair and dark eyes, and there was something reptilian about his stare. This had to be Snake. "I do not think Cole said you could leave yet," Snake said. "Step aside." "Or what? Or I will move you. Your choice." Snake's hand dropped toward his gun, and Ryder's Colt was out and pressed against the man's belly before he could clear leather. The room exploded with the sound of guns being cocked and drawn. Ryder did not look around. He kept his eyes on Snake. "Here is how this is going to work," Ryder said quietly, his voice cold and flat. "You are going to step aside and let me leave. I am going to walk out that door, and everyone is going to pretend this never happened. Because if bullets start flying in this crowded room, a lot of innocent people are going to die, and you are going to be first." "Stand down, Snake," Cole called out from his table. "Let him go." Snake stared at Ryder with pure hatred, but he stepped aside. Ryder holstered his gun and walked the rest of the way to the door, every muscle tensed for the bullet he half expected to feel slam into his back. But it did not come. He made it out onto the boardwalk, then into the alley where his horse was waiting. Only when he was mounted and riding out of town did he allow himself to breathe normally again. That had gone better than he had hoped. He had delivered his message and walked away alive. But he knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Pierce would not let this stand. The man's pride would demand a response, and that response would come soon. When Ryder rode back into the Emerson ranch, he found Clara waiting on the porch. She ran to him as soon as she saw him, and he dismounted just in time to catch her as she threw herself into his arms. "You came back," she said against his chest. "I was so scared you would not come back. I promised I would try." She pulled back to look at him, her hands framing his face. "Did it work? Did you deliver your message?" "I did, and they heard me." "But Clara, you need to understand that this is only going to make things more complicated. Pierce will see this as a challenge and he will respond." "I know. But at least now he knows we are not helpless, that we have someone willing to stand up to him. We should go inside." "I need to talk to your father." They found Charles and Thomas in the main room, both of them looking anxious. Margaret was there too, sitting in a rocking chair near the fireplace with a rifle across her lap. Emma was nowhere to be seen, probably safely asleep in her room. "Well," Charles asked. "What happened?" Ryder recounted his confrontation with Cole, leaving out the part with Snake that had nearly ended in gunfire. When he finished, Charles nodded slowly. "So what do you think Pierce will do now?" "He will push back, probably within the next day or two. He cannot let my challenge go unanswered, or he will lose face with his men and anyone else who might be thinking about standing up to him. So we should be ready for an attack." "Yes, and not just harassment this time. I think he is going to try something more direct." "Like what?" "I do not know yet. But whatever it is, we need to be prepared for the worst." They spent the rest of the night planning. Ryder assigned watch positions and made sure everyone knew what to do if Pierce's men came. Charles brought out his old army rifle and Thomas checked his shotgun. Margaret revealed that she had a small pistol she kept hidden in her room. Even Clara, despite Ryder's protests, insisted on being part of the defense. "This is my family and my home," she said firmly. "I am not going to hide in a back room while everyone else fights. I am not asking you to hide. I am asking you to be smart. You are not a gunfighter, Clara. Neither are my father or brother or aunt, but we are all willing to fight for this place. All I ask is that you let me do the same." He wanted to argue, but he could see it would do no good. So instead, he made her promise that she would stay near the house, where she could find cover if shooting started. As dawn broke over the mountains, they were as ready as they could be. Charles and Thomas positioned themselves in the house. Margaret took Emma to the cellar, where they would be safest if the worst happened. Clara, despite Ryder's objections, stationed herself near the water pump with a clear view of the main approach to the ranch, and Ryder waited on the porch, rifle in hand, watching the dirt road that led from town. They came at mid-morning when the sun was high and the shadows short. Ryder counted 8 riders, all of them armed. He recognized Grady Cole at the head of the group, and Snake riding beside him. The others were likely hired guns or ranch hands willing to fight for pay. They stopped about 100 yards from the house, just out of easy rifle range. Cole walked his horse forward a few steps, his hands clearly visible and away from his weapons. "Lawson," he called out, "I have got a message from Mr. Pierce. I am listening. He says your little stunt last night was amusing, but ultimately pointless. He still wants this land and he still intends to have it. He is giving the Emersons until sundown tomorrow to accept his offer. After that, he cannot be responsible for what happens." "Is that all?" "Not quite. He also wants you to know that if you are still here after sundown tomorrow, he is putting a price on your head. $500 to the man who brings you in. Dead or alive, he does not care which. Tell Pierce he can take his money and his threats and go straight to hell." Cole shrugged. "I will pass that along. But you should know $500 is a lot of money. There are going to be a lot of men looking to collect. Let them try. Your funeral." Cole turned his horse and started to ride away. Then he paused and looked back. "You know, Lawson, under different circumstances, I think we could have been friends. You have got guts, I will give you that. It is just too bad you picked the wrong side." "I picked the side that needed me. That is the only side that matters." Cole nodded once, almost respectfully, and then he and his men rode away. Ryder watched until they were out of sight, then lowered his rifle and turned to find Clara standing behind him. "What now?" she asked. "Now we finish this, one way or another." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Pierce has made his position clear. He is not backing down and neither are we, so it is going to end in blood. The only question is whose. There has to be another way. If there is, I have not thought of it. Have you?" She shook her head helplessly. "No. But I keep hoping that somehow this can end without more people getting hurt. Hope is good, but it is not a strategy." Charles emerged from the house, his face drawn. "So we have until tomorrow at sundown." "That is what they said, but I would not count on them waiting that long. Pierce is the kind of man who likes to keep his opponents off balance. He might come early just to catch us by surprise. Then we need to be ready all the time." "Yes." The rest of that day was spent in tense preparation. They checked weapons and ammunition. They filled water barrels in case the house caught fire. They moved the livestock into the closest corral so they could not be easily stolen or scattered. They did everything they could think of to prepare for the coming fight. As evening fell, Ryder found himself alone in the barn, checking his horse and making sure he could saddle quickly if he needed to leave in a hurry. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Emma standing in the doorway. She was small for 14, with her mother's auburn hair and her father's brown eyes. She looked fragile, almost ghostly in the fading light. It was the first time Ryder had seen her since arriving at the ranch. "You are Mr. Lawson," she said softly. It was not a question. "That is right. You must be Emma. Clara says you are going to protect us from the bad men. I am going to try." She moved further into the barn, hugging herself as though cold despite the warmth of the evening. "I do not like being scared all the time. I know, but it is going to be over soon. One way or another. Will you kill them? The bad men," he considered lying, giving her some gentle answer that would not frighten her more, but she deserved the truth. "If I have to keep you and your family safe." She nodded slowly, as though that was the answer she had expected. "My mother used to say that sometimes good people have to do hard things to protect the ones they love. Is that what you are doing? A hard thing?" "Yes." "Then thank you." She turned and started to leave, then paused. "Clara likes you, I can tell. She smiles when she talks about you, even though she is scared. I hope you do not die protecting us. I think it would make her very sad." Before he could respond, she slipped back out into the gathering darkness, leaving him alone with thoughts he did not want to examine too closely. That night, Clara came to him again. He was on watch, walking the perimeter of the ranch when she appeared out of the shadows wrapped in a shawl. "You should be sleeping," he said, "so should you. But here we are." They walked together in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the valley. Finally, Clara said, "Emma came to see you." "Yes." "What did she say?" "She asked if I was going to kill Pierce's men. I told her the truth." "And what is the truth?" "That I will do whatever I have to do to keep your family safe. Even if it means crossing lines I swore I would never cross again." "What lines?" He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Clara, I need you to understand something. If this goes the way I think it is going to go, tomorrow is going to be bad. Really bad. And when it is over, you might not like the man you are looking at. You might not be able to separate the man who sat on your porch and drank coffee from the man who did what needs to be done. You think I am going to judge you for protecting us. I think you are going to see a side of me that you have not seen before. A side that is not gentle or kind or anything you might want in your life." She reached up and touched his face, her hand soft against his stubbled cheek. "Ryder, I already know who you are. I have known since that first moment in the chapel. You are a man who has done hard things and made difficult choices. But you are also a man who stopped when he did not have to, who helped when he had every reason to walk away. Whatever you do tomorrow, whatever you have to become to keep us safe, I will still know who you really are underneath. And who is that? Someone good. Someone worth caring about. Someone I could easily fall in love with if you gave me half a chance." Her words hit him like a physical blow. "Clara, you should not say things like that." "Why not?" "Because it scares you. Because it makes this real. Because I do not deserve it. Because I am not the man you think I am. You do not get to decide what I deserve or who I care about. That is my choice and I choose you. So whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that. I want you to come back knowing that someone is waiting for you. Someone who sees you for who you really are and wants you anyway." He kissed her then, pulling her close and pouring everything he could not say into the touch of his lips against hers. She melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck, and for a moment the rest of the world fell away. There was no Pierce, no gunfighters, no ranch worth killing for. There was just the two of them, two people who had found each other in the worst possible circumstances and somehow managed to see past the fear to something worth holding on to. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "If we survive tomorrow, if this somehow ends without everyone dead or scattered, I want to try, to see what this could be between us. But Clara, you have to know that I do not know how to be what you need. I have been alone for so long. Then maybe it is time to learn how to be something else. And maybe I can help you figure it out." They stood there in the darkness, holding each other until the first light of dawn began to touch the eastern sky. Then, reluctantly, they separated. There was work to be done and a fight to prepare for. The attack came just after noon. Ryder was checking the rifles in the house when Thomas shouted from the second-floor window. "Ryder's coming. A lot of them." Ryder ran to the window and counted quickly. At least 15 men, maybe more. This was not a harassment raid. This was an all-out assault. "Charles, get Margaret and Emma to the cellar now," he shouted. "Thomas, you take the east side of the house. Clara, you stay downstairs near the back door in case anyone tries to come in that way. And for God's sake, stay down." The riders spread out as they approached, forming a loose line that would let them attack from multiple directions at once. Ryder recognized Cole in the center and Snake off to the left. The rest were strangers, probably hired guns who had come for the bounty Pierce had put on his head. They stopped about 200 yards out, just beyond effective rifle range. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Cole raised his hand and the line started forward at a walk. "Wait until they are in range," Ryder told Thomas. "Make every shot count. We do not have ammunition to waste." The riders came on slowly, confidently. They knew they had the numbers and they were in no hurry. When they were about 100 yards out, Ryder picked his target, a big man on a gray horse riding just to Cole's right. He took a breath, let it out slowly, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder and the big man toppled from his saddle. The line of riders exploded into motion. Some charged forward. Others wheeled their horses and scattered, looking for cover. Ryder worked the lever action and fired again, then again. Beside him, Thomas's shotgun boomed. From somewhere downstairs, he heard Clara's rifle crack. The riders returned fire, bullets smashing through windows and thudding into the wooden walls. Ryder ducked below the window sill and reloaded, then popped back up for another shot. He saw Cole directing his men, splitting them into groups. Some were heading for the barn, others toward the cookhouse. They were trying to surround the house. "Thomas, they are flanking us," Ryder shouted. "Watch the sides." A group of 3 riders made it to the barn and took cover behind it. From there, they had a clear angle on the back of the house. Ryder saw one of them raise his rifle and aim at the back door where Clara was stationed. "Clara, get away from the door," he screamed. She moved just as the bullet shattered the door frame where her head had been a second before. Ryder fired back, his bullet punching through the barn wall, and one of the men cried out. The fight settled into a deadly pattern. Pierce's men would advance, fire a few shots, then retreat when return fire got too hot. They were testing the defenses, looking for weak points. Ryder knew they would find them eventually. There were too many attackers and not enough defenders. "We need to thin their numbers," he told Thomas. "Otherwise they are going to wear us down." "How?" "I am going out there." "That is suicide, maybe. But if I can take down Cole or Snake, the rest might lose their nerve. Most of them are just hired guns. They are not going to die for Pierce if their leaders are dead." Before Thomas could argue, Ryder was moving. He ran downstairs and found Clara crouched beside the back door, her rifle ready. "I am going out. Cover me." Ryder, no, but he was already through the door, running low and fast toward the cookhouse. Bullets kicked up dirt around him, but he made it to cover without being hit. From there, he had a better angle on the barn where several of Pierce's men had holed up. He fired twice through a gap in the barn walls and was rewarded with a scream. Then he was moving again, circling around toward the bunkhouse. His goal was to get behind the main group of attackers, force them to split their attention between the house and wherever he was. He almost made it. He was 20 feet from the bunkhouse when a figure stepped out from behind the water trough. Snake, his gun already drawn and aimed. "End of the line, Lawson," Snake said with a cold smile. Ryder dove to the side as Snake fired. The bullet passed so close he felt the wind of it. He hit the ground rolling, came up firing. His first shot missed, but the second caught Snake in the shoulder, spinning him around. The gunfighter dropped his weapon and clutched at the wound, blood seeping between his fingers. Ryder stood and advanced, his Colt trained on Snake's chest. "Tell me where Pierce is. Go to hell." "I will. But you are going first if you do not answer me," Snake laughed, a harsh sound edged with pain. "You think killing me matters. Pierce has got dozens more where I came from. You are already dead, you just do not know it yet." A rifle shot rang out from near the barn. Ryder felt something slam into his side, a hot spike of pain that drove him to his knees. He fired blindly toward the barn, then looked down to see blood spreading across his shirt. He had been shot. The world tilted and blurred. He heard Clara screaming his name from somewhere far away. Heard more gunfire, the thunder of hooves. Saw Snake crawling toward his dropped gun. Ryder raised his Colt with effort that felt almost impossible. His hand shook, his vision swam, but he pulled the trigger. Snake jerked and lay still. Then strong hands were pulling him backwards, dragging him toward the house. He looked up and saw Thomas's face, pale and frightened. "Stay with me, Mr. Lawson. Stay awake." They made it to the back door and Clara was there, her hands pressing against his side, trying to stop the bleeding. "You idiot," she sobbed. "You stupid, brave idiot." "How bad?" he managed to ask. "Bad enough." "Papa, Papa, he has been shot." Charles appeared, took one look at the wound and said, "Get him inside." "Margaret," they half carried, half dragged him into the house and laid him on the table. The shooting outside had stopped. Either Pierce's men were regrouping or they had given up. Ryder could not tell which and found he did not much care at the moment. Margaret hurried in from the cellar, saw the blood, and immediately took charge. "I need hot water, clean cloths, and whiskey. Now." Clara ran to obey while Margaret cut away Ryder's shirt to examine the wound. "The bullet went through," she said. "That is good, but he is losing a lot of blood." "Am I dying?" Ryder asked, surprised by how calm he sounded. "Not if I have anything to say about it," Margaret replied. "But this is going to hurt. Clara, give me that whiskey." The pain that came next was beyond anything Ryder had ever experienced. Margaret cleaned the wound with whiskey, front and back, and he screamed despite himself. Then she was packing the holes with cloth, wrapping him tight to slow the bleeding through it all. Clara held his hand, whispering to him, "Stay with me. Please stay with me. You promised you would try to come back and you cannot break that promise. You hear me, Ryder Lawson? You cannot leave me now. Not when I just found you." He tried to answer, but the pain dragged him down into darkness. When he woke, it was dark outside and he was lying on a bed in a room he did not recognize. Every inch of his body hurt, but especially his side where the bullet had torn through him. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "Do not move," Clara said from somewhere nearby. He turned his head carefully and saw her sitting in a chair beside the bed, her face haggard with exhaustion. "What happened?" he managed to croak. "After you shot Snake, Pierce's men lost their nerve. They collected their dead and wounded and rode off. We have not seen them since." "How long?" 2 days. "You have been unconscious for 2 days. We were not sure you were going to wake up." "Hard to kill," he muttered. She laughed, but it turned into a sob. "I thought I lost you. I thought you were going to die on that table and I would never get to tell you how much you mean to me. I am not dead yet." "No, but you came too close." She leaned forward and took his hand. "The doctor from town came yesterday. Papa sent for him after the shooting stopped. He said you were lucky that the bullet missed anything vital, but he also said you needed rest and time to heal. So that is what you are going to do. No arguments. Pierce. No one has seen him or his men since the attack. Some people in town are saying he left, that the fight cost him too much and he decided the land was not worth it. Others think he is just regrouping. We do not know for sure. You should leave. Take your family and go somewhere safe until we know for certain." "We are not going anywhere, and neither are you. You are going to stay here and heal, and then we are going to figure out what comes next. Together." Over the following weeks, Ryder slowly recovered. The wound in his side healed cleanly, though it left a wicked scar that Margaret said he would carry for the rest of his life. At first he could barely walk from the bed to the door. But gradually, with Clara's help, he regained his strength. Clara was with him almost constantly during those weeks. She changed his bandages, brought him meals, sat with him when the pain was too bad to sleep. They talked about everything and nothing, about her childhood on the ranch, about his years drifting through the territories, about hopes and dreams and fears. "What will you do?" she asked one afternoon as he sat on the porch, finally strong enough to venture out of the house. "When you are healed, I mean." "I have been thinking about that," he admitted. "I could move on, find another job, another town, another fight. That is what I always did before. Or I could stay. If you would have me, I do not know much about ranching, but I could learn, and I am pretty good at fixing things and building things. Thomas mentioned wanting to rebuild the barn. I could help with that." Clara's face lit up with joy so pure it almost hurt to look at. "You want to stay here with us?" "With you," he corrected. "If you want me. I know I am not much of a prize. I have a past, I have scars, I have done things I am not proud of. But Clara, these past weeks with you have been the closest thing to happy I have felt in years. And I would like to see where this goes, if you are willing to take a chance on me." She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and whispered against his lips, "I have been taking a chance on you since the moment I saw you in that chapel, and I would do it again 1,000 times over." About a week later, Sheriff Dalton rode out to the ranch. Ryder tensed when he saw the lawman, but Dalton raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "I am not here to cause trouble," Dalton said. "I came to tell you that Jacob Pierce left Salida, packed up his operation and headed for Denver. Word is, the fight here cost him 6 men dead and 4 wounded. His investors pulled out after that, said the situation was too volatile. Without their money, Pierce could not afford to keep pushing." "So it is over?" Charles asked. "Looks like it. I also came to say I am sorry. I should have stood up to Pierce from the beginning, but I was afraid. And because I was afraid, good people got hurt. I wanted you to know that I have resigned as sheriff. The town is looking for someone with more backbone to take my place." "Took guts to come here and say that," Ryder observed. "Not as much as it took for you folks to stand up to Pierce in the first place. You did what I should have done. You fought for what was right, even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous. I hope that counts for something." After Dalton left, the Emerson family gathered on the porch. For the first time in months, there was no fear, no tension, no looking over their shoulders for the next attack. It was just a family standing together, still standing after everything Pierce had thrown at them. "We need to celebrate," Charles declared. "Margaret, what do you say we put together a proper feast tonight, something worth remembering?" "I think that is a fine idea," Margaret agreed. "Emma, come help me in the kitchen." As the others went inside, Clara and Ryder lingered on the porch. She leaned against him carefully, mindful of his still healing wound, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "I have been thinking about what comes next," she said. "Now that Pierce is gone and we can actually plan for the future instead of just trying to survive." "And what have you been thinking?" "That we need to rebuild. The barn, the fences, everything Pierce destroyed. And then maybe, if you are still willing, we could start building something else, something just for us." "Like what?" She turned to look up at him, her green eyes full of hope and promise. "Like a life together, like a future. Maybe even a family someday, if that is something you would want." "Clara Emerson, are you proposing to me?" "I suppose I am, though it would be nice if you did the asking eventually." "You know, properly." He pretended to think about it. "I might be able to arrange that. Give me a few more weeks to heal up so I can do it right. Maybe get a ring from town. Ask your father's permission like a gentleman." "My father already gave his permission. I asked him last week." "You asked him before you asked me." "I wanted to make sure he would say yes before I put my heart on the line." Ryder laughed, and it felt strange and wonderful. He could not remember the last time he had laughed with real joy. "You are something else, Clara Emerson. Is that a yes?" "That is a yes. To all of it. To staying, to building, to whatever future we can make together." 3 months later, on a crisp October morning with the aspens turned gold and the first snow dusting the mountain peaks, Ryder and Clara were married in the small chapel where they had first met. The whole town turned out, eager to celebrate the couple who had stood up to Pierce and somehow survived. Emma, fully recovered from her trauma, served as Clara's maid of honor. Thomas stood up with Ryder, having become something of a younger brother to the former gunfighter. Charles gave his daughter away with tears in his eyes, while Margaret watched proudly from the front pew. As Ryder slipped a simple gold band onto Clara's finger, he thought about all the twists and turns that had led him to this moment. He thought about the gunfight in Leadville that he had been running from, about the desperate prayer that Clara had whispered in this very chapel, about the miracle she claimed to have found in him. He still was not sure he believed in miracles. But standing there with Clara's hand in his, promising to love and cherish her for the rest of his days, he believed in second chances. He believed in the possibility of redemption. And he believed that sometimes, when you least expected it, you found exactly what you needed even if you had not known you were looking for it. The years that followed were good ones. Ryder and Clara built a small house on the northern edge of the ranch, close enough to the main house to help Charles and Thomas, but far enough away to have their own space. Ryder proved to be a natural at ranching, his years of hard living giving him the strength and determination needed for the work. Together with Thomas, he rebuilt the barn even better than it had been before. They repaired all the fences, bought new cattle to replace those that had been scattered or stolen, and slowly brought the ranch back to prosperity. Emma blossomed under the stability, eventually becoming a schoolteacher in Salida and marrying a young doctor who had moved to town. Thomas took over more and more of the ranch operations as Charles grew older, proving himself to be a capable and fair-minded leader. And Clara, his Clara, became the center of Ryder's world. She taught him what it meant to be loved unconditionally, to be accepted for who he was rather than who he thought he should be. She helped him make peace with his past, not by forgetting it, but by understanding that what he had done did not have to define what he would do. 2 years after their wedding, Clara gave birth to a son. They named him Charles after her father, but everyone called him Charlie. He had his mother's auburn hair and his father's gray eyes, and from the moment Ryder held him for the first time, he understood why men fought to protect their families. This was what mattered. This was worth living for, worth changing for, worth being better for. 3 years later came a daughter, Margaret, named for Clara's aunt. She was fierce and independent from the start, reminding Ryder so much of her mother that it made his heart ache in the best possible way. On Charlie's 5th birthday, as they gathered in the yard for a celebration, Ryder found himself standing on the porch watching his family. Clara was laughing at something Emma had said while Margaret toddled after her older brother. Thomas was teaching Charlie how to rope a fence post. Charles Sr. was sitting in the sun with a blanket over his legs, getting on in years but still sharp as a tack. Margaret, his aunt-in-law, was directing the food preparation with her usual efficiency. This was his life now. These were his people. This was home. Clara came to stand beside him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how different things could have been. If I had ridden past that chapel instead of stopping, if you had not been praying that day, if I had said no when you asked for help. Do you regret saying yes?" "Not for a single second. That was the best decision I ever made." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you were always supposed to find that chapel. I think you were always supposed to walk through those doors at exactly that moment. I asked God for a miracle and He sent me you. Not because you were perfect, but because you were exactly what we needed. I am not sure God had much to do with it. Maybe not. But I like to think that my mother had something to do with it, that she was watching over us and guided you to where we needed you most. Does that sound foolish?" "No," Ryder said, pulling her closer. "It sounds like faith, and maybe I am finally learning what that means." As the sun set over the mountains that evening, painting the valley in shades of gold and crimson, Ryder Lawson stood surrounded by the family he had never thought he would have. He had been a cowboy, a gunfighter, a man running from his past and uncertain of his future. But that day in the chapel, everything had changed. Clara had called him a miracle. He still was not sure about that, but she had definitely been his miracle. She had seen past the guns and the scars to the man underneath. She had offered him hope when he had none. She had given him a reason to stay when all he had known was how to leave. And in return, he had given her his heart, his loyalty, and every day for the rest of his life. The story of the cowboy who found a woman praying in a chapel became something of a legend in Salida. People told it to their children as an example of faith and courage. They told it to remind themselves that sometimes the help we need comes from the most unexpected places. They told it because it was a story of hope in dark times, of love conquering fear, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But for Ryder and Clara, it was not a legend. It was simply their beginning. The first chapter of a life built together through hard work, deep love, and the understanding that sometimes the greatest miracles are not the dramatic interventions from above, but the simple choice to show up for someone who needs you. Years later, when their grandchildren asked Ryder to tell them about how he and Grandma Clara met, he would smile and say, "Your grandmother will tell you she prayed for a miracle and found me. But the truth is, I was the one who found the miracle that day, and her name was Clara." And Clara, sitting beside him with her hand in his, would smile and say nothing, because she knew that they were both right. They had found each other exactly when they needed to, and that had made all the difference. Their love story continued through the decades, through good times and hard times, through joy and sorrow, through the ordinary moments that make up a life well lived. They watched their children grow and have children of their own. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and holidays. They worked side by side building something lasting, something real, something worth all the struggles that had brought them together. When Ryder was 72 and Clara 70, they renewed their vows in the same chapel where they had met all those years before. Their children and grandchildren filled the pews, and the whole town came out to celebrate the couple who had become a symbol of enduring love. Standing at the altar, Ryder looked into Clara's eyes and saw the same woman who had called him a miracle 50 years ago. Her hair was silver now instead of auburn, and time had lined her face, but her green eyes still sparkled with the same fierce love and determination that had captivated him from the start. "I asked for a miracle and found you," she whispered, repeating the words that had started it all. "And I was lost until I found you," he replied. "Best wrong turn I ever made." As they kissed, surrounded by the family and community they had built together, Ryder Lawson felt something he had never expected to feel. He felt complete. He felt at peace. He felt finally and fully at home. The cowboy who had spent so many years running had finally stopped running, and in stopping, he had found everything he never knew he needed: a home, a family, a purpose, and a love that had sustained him through every challenge and carried him into a future brighter than any he had imagined. That night, back at the ranch house they had built together, Ryder and Clara sat on their porch watching the stars come out over the mountains. Their youngest grandson was asleep on Clara's lap, worn out from the day's celebrations. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if we had never met?" Clara asked softly. "Sometimes. And I thank God every time that I will never have to know. Whatever I was before that day in the chapel, whoever I might have become if I had kept riding, none of it matters. This is who I was meant to be. Your husband, the father of our children, the grandfather to these babies. This was always where I was supposed to end up. Even with all the hard parts, the fighting, the fear, almost dying, especially because of the hard parts. Those things showed me what was worth fighting for. They showed me that I could be more than just a man with a gun, that I could build instead of destroy, protect instead of harm, love instead of running away from love. Clara smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. I love you, Ryder Lawson. I loved you from the moment you walked through those chapel doors, even though I did not know it yet. And I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Clara. You are the miracle I never had the sense to pray for, but I thank God every day that you prayed for me. They sat there in comfortable silence as the stars wheeled overhead and the night sounds of the valley filled the air. A life well lived, a love well earned, a miracle found in the most unexpected place by two people who needed each other more than either had known. And somewhere in the mountains, in a small chapel on the outskirts of Salida, Colorado, the wind whispered through the windows and stirred the dust on the pews where a cowboy and a woman had once found each other. Where a prayer had been answered in the form of a stranger with a gun and a good heart. Where a story had begun that would be told for generations as proof that sometimes, when you need it most, miracles do happen. The end.